Friday. It's my day off. Thank God for finishing up my taxes. And this is the third part of going beyond the pentatonic scale, helping anybody who's watching in their lead playing. What you just heard, the intro chord progression is from a song called Lucha de Gigantes. It's a song written by a Mexican band named Naca Pop or Nacha Pop. Look it up, it's a really good song. So in this video we're going to talk about the diatonic scale, and we're going to go across the whole fretboard. Now I assume before getting into this video series that you know the pentatonic scale, all the 5 shapes of the pentatonic scale. In case you don't, let's just sort of do a rehash for those who don't know the 5 shapes of the pentatonic scale. So in the past videos we were using A minor. In this video we'll start with E minor because it's easier to visualize. So the first position is the same as, it's just up, all the way up to the nut. So it's, okay? So that is the first position. Now notice that I'm using open strings for the first finger, so the first finger, which means in the first position, your first finger is always going to be at the same fret number. I don't want you to start thinking about fret numbers though. Fret numbers are really totally unimportant in terms of the guitar. You want to think in shapes, and you know, in video 1, if I talked about trying to get out of the shapes and things like that, I was not referring to shapes generally. I was referring to the first pentatonic position, or the second going into the first leading into the third, if you're stuck in those 3 sub positions. So again, let's go over the pentatonic scale. First position again is right. Second position is a bit more difficult. We'll start with the E. Keep in mind, this E minor pentatonic scale is the same thing as the G major pentatonic scale. In the same way, in our prior video, we talked about the A minor being the same thing as the C major. They're relative majors and minors. That's a part of music theory, and that applies to all keys, all chords, if you will, all major versus minor keys and chords. I'm not going to get deep into theory here because that's not what these videos are about. These videos are to get as little theory as possible and as much playing as possible. So the second position, and we'll start with the G this time instead of the open E. So it's, sorry, added a last note there. So you see it's the first position. That's the second position. Same sound, except you're moving a few frets up. So second position again is starting with the G. Sorry. Okay. Learn by ear. If you can't see my fingers on the fretboard, the best way is to learn by ear. And I can make a whole video about how to learn by ear, but that's not for this video. It would be perfect if you would just turn your screens blank and just learn by ear instead of looking at the video. So just as with the first position, every position of the pentatonic scale across the fretboard, there's 2 notes per string, okay? Sometimes 1 note per string, as in our case the second position. The last E string, that G, that's the only note that sounds until we get further. Okay, so we go to the third position. Right? If you start with the G, it'll sound minor, major. If you start with the E, it'll sound minor. But again, and this is, for a lot of players, this is a favorite position of theirs. As you can see, first 3 strings you can go, such as, it's the same note. So all it requires is the first and the index finger. So again, the third position is, this is the first position. The fourth position is, okay, that's the fourth position. Again. Sorry. Okay, fourth position. Okay, that's it. And that's the fifth position. Sorry, that's the fifth position. So you have all 5 positions of the pentatonic scale. Now, we're going to learn the diatonic scale, which is the same thing as the pentatonic scale, except you add 2 notes. Now, when we're doing our first position pentatonic scale, we're running through not just 1 octave. Remember, pentatonic scale is only 5 notes, so if you add up all the notes, that's like 12 notes. So that means we're going more than an octave. So so every time you use that first position, you're using more than 1 octave. Remember, the pentatonic position is 5 notes. Diatonic has 7 notes. This is a symbol for 7 in some parts of the world. So the diatonic scale is very easy to learn. It's the exact same shapes as the pentatonic scale shapes. You just add 2 notes per octave. So every octave you're going to be adding 2 notes. I'm not going to get into music theory as to which specific notes, but if we focus on E minor / G major, it applies, if you learn that, it'll apply everywhere down the neck, because the beautiful thing about the guitar is it's the ability of transposition. You can transfer the chords. Sorry, let me turn my fan down. It's getting a little cold. It was hot in here. But transposition. So all you have to do is learn it in E minor, G major, which is what I'm going to show you, and you can use it for any key. You can use it for F flat major, for example. Well, I'm sorry, F sharp major, for example. There's a bit of theory for you. Again, we're not going into theory. So 2 notes per octave. So how does it sound? It sounds different. I'm not going to be able to do the first position on the nut, because there's actually a sound below the nut. There's a tone below the nut. So we'll start with the first position being in A minor, and then we'll continue with the E minor positions. But just because we have to have a note behind the nut, we're going to use the A minor scale for the first position. So A minor, diatonic, meaning all 7 notes. To complete it, you'll notice, right? That's that note behind the nut that I was talking about. That might not sound very familiar to you, but that is the E minor diatonic scale, meaning full 7-note scale. Now, if I were to play its opposite, its relative, the major scale, anybody who's ever studied music, piano, bass, violin, not drums, but anybody who's studied music, clarinet, whatever, been in a band or an orchestra, knows this scale, obviously. Right? that scale. Okay, there you go. That's the first position. Again, if I were to play it on the E string, it would be. I had to compensate for the one note not being on the nut. Okay, so the added notes in the first position are going to be on your B string. It's going to be, let's go back to A, it's going to be that note instead of going. Okay, so that one note, that's going to be on the B string, and there's going to be one extra note on the A string that's behind the nut, which is. So I compensated by going, we're going with the E. That is the full diatonic scale in E minor. Now let's stay with the E minor / G major, and let's go with the second position. So that was the first position. Let's go with the second position, and let's just do G major. It's the same scale. It'll sound more together, more familiar if I just use G major. It all depends on which strings you start on. That's it. Okay. So starting on G major, second position of the diatonic 7-note scale is. Oh, sorry. Learn by ear if you could. And this position is a very familiar position. It can be played alternately. A lot of shred guitarists, people who play fast shred guitar. I'm not one of those guitarists, nor do I aim to be or practice to be, but if you want to play it differently, again, you can do 3 notes per you can do 3 notes per 3 notes per string. You really don't need to know this, but there is an alternate way. It's not a, I wouldn't call it a position because it stretches numerous positions, but it's basically if you can stretch. Again, if you can stretch, do it. If you can't, don't do it. Even if you can stretch, I recommend just staying with the second position. At a certain point, muscle memory will kick in and you can do the scale like I can. Okay, third position. Again, let's stick with the G because it sounds familiar. Continue. One more time, third position. Again, this is the G. That's the tonic. That's just the other, if you want to continue on the high E string. E. Fourth position. Didn't have to go that far, but again, fourth position. That's the tonic. pentatonic, if you keep going, it'll go. Fourth position. Fifth position. Sorry. Do it again. Fifth position. We're going back into the first position again. But fifth position one last time. Okay, so know all 5 positions and be able to use them in solos. You got to integrate these, what you just learned, into solos. So, for example, instead of just playing, you can play something like. I mean, to give it more color, if you will, to add in those 2 other diatonic notes. That was just offhand. That didn't sound very good, but if you do it the right way, it'll sound pretty good. Integration. So how do you integrate it? Practice. Learn the backing track, whatever chords are playing. You can go back to my videos, or my videos actually, and look at my solo for Little Wing, the Little Wing solo. I use primarily positions 1 and position X1 because I'm using the octave, and position 3. And position 3 is basically when you're doing your E minor. Position 3 is basically. That's position 3. But position 3 a lot of times. So a lot of times when you go into position 3, you want to lead into it with position. Actually, I play position 3 and 4. You lead into position 4 through position 3. So we're in the E minor. So you go. And then the next one's pretty tough because you have it's a 1.5 step interval. So instead of going 1.5 step, using your pinky or stretching, you can slide down to the next position, and that way you can maintain doing just what you're doing. So, you know, if you look at that video, that Little Wing solo I did, it's basically an improvisational solo, but it shows you how I go back and forth between the 4th, 3rd, and the 5th positions and how they connect. Now, how do you connect these positions aside from looking at that video and practicing on your own? Well, one thing, and I'm using notes here, one thing that's really important is intervals, okay? So intervals is basically, you have your root note. Let's say we are in C major, A minor. The root note is in A. So that note by itself, there is no interval. Technically there is, and the interval is 0, and that's called a unison. Now if I were to go here, that is an octave, right? From our prior videos we learned same note, same tone, same frequency, just higher pitch is an octave. So again, that's a unison. That's just a root. You can call that a root or a unison. Now if I were to go 1/2 step more, that is 1/2 step, and that is called a minor second. Another 1/2 step, instead of that, that's called a major second. And the reason it's called that because, you know, it sounds like a major. This sounds like a minor. Beyond that, if you go 1.5 half steps, this is part of our pentatonic scale, right? And if you go one more half step, that's 3 half steps. That's called a minor third. And remember, a minor third is what all minor chords are built upon. So with the A, so if you're playing an A, for example, you have to know where your position is, where your favorite position is. Most guitarists, like myself included, we have favorite positions on the neck where I like to be at. So you want to know your positions. How do you know your positions aside from practicing them? Again, use intervals. Use your voice. I need to make a whole nother video about using your voice, because your voice is a ginormous tool from which you can learn a lot. And a lot of us are embarrassed because, you know, we have people living around us. We may live in a crowded environment. It's really important to use your voice. That's how you know whether you are, you know, when you're sliding into the next or the previous shape, that's how you know to hit the correct note, because you know what the intervals sound like. Okay? A half step interval sounds like this. It's a minor second. Whole step interval is a major second, and it sounds like this. A minor third, which is the last interval that we'll need to consider, is, for our purposes, is called a major third, and it sounds like this. That's 3 whole half steps. Okay? And that's basically it. I'll show you a demonstration of using these diatonic notes. I routinely record myself practicing, and this is from like a year ago, and this is in G major, I believe. I believe this is in G major. Let me see. Yep. That was a bit sloppy. I was a bit wasted, but in the first few stanzas you can see me using both of those notes, and they're used widely across music. Right now I'm actually playing off of a Fender Frontman 10G, which I got for free from a friend of mine for exchange for me to set up his guitar and to swap out his pickups. So these are worth like 60 bucks. They're really good practice amps, just not very loud, and the distortion leaves a lot to be desired. But you know, you'll see this in everywhere, in all kinds of music. You'll see not just the pentatonic scale, I'm talking about lead playing, but with the diatonic scale and other notes as well, sometimes other grace notes from other types of scales you'll see in the highest level of lead playing. So for example, Joe Satriani is a player that a lot of guitarists admire. If you know the diatonic scale, then a lot of his solo stuff is very simple to pick up. You don't even have to go to tabs. You just listen to him, and it just, you know, it's very obvious. For example, wait, I'm sorry, I can't get the song in my mind. All right, this is this one. was a very bad version, but as you can see, he uses... So he uses that diatonic note, that note, that kind of throwaway note that you would think, but it's actually very important. It serves to spice up your playing by a lot. So I hope you'll take these tips and go and practice, and I'll come out with more videos. I already have one in the works about which books you should pick up on, and why use books in the first place when we have so much information out there for self-taught guitarists. So goodbye.